Hello and welcome to another video with me, Rauchenwald. Now in today's video I want to take a closer look at Upland and answer the question, is it worth your time? Can you make money with Upland? And if so, what's the best way to go about it? So how can you make sure that you actually earn the most with the least amount of time? And before we jump into Upland, there are a few things that I want to talk about so to provide you with a general understanding of Upland. Upland, as mentioned, is a browser or mobile game depending on which device you're using it, and it uses a cryptocurrency called UPX. Now that by itself is great, however there's one huge catch to it. While you can buy UPX with in-app purchases for up to $24,999 and I think 99 cents, well, you cannot sell, trade or withdraw UPX directly. Sounds like a kind of big flaw if you want to make money from Upland. However, it's not a big problem because in the end you're still able to sell properties for fiat currencies, which means properties you own you can eventually sell against US dollar payouts that you receive via PayPal. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about how to get started with Upland and how to actually proceed in the best possible way. First things first, if you don't have an Upland account yet, you can use the link in the description of the first pinned comment down below. That will take you to a screen that looks like this, where you can pick your username, email address and password. Now I already created an account, therefore I'm not going to sign up again because it's against Upland's terms of service to have more than one account, so don't try doing that, which means in my case I'm going to switch to the login here. One thing I can already tell you from experience, once you sign up, you will see a guided tutorial, so there will be some animations that explain some basic steps within Upland, and you should not skip those tutorials but pay close attention. Personally, I really screwed up by skipping those tutorials and I'm still suffering the consequences for my mistakes. In your case, as mentioned, pay attention to the tutorials. I'm gonna finish logging in here in the meantime. And then we're going to talk about how to best proceed within Upland. And some of the words and phrases that I will use during the rest of this video will make way more sense to you if you actually paid attention to the tutorial. For example, looking back at the screen, this green tree here is my so-called block explorer. So it's kind of like my character moving through Upland. And as you see, I'm in the New York, or more precisely Brooklyn area, which is one of the first mistakes that I personally made. To understand that mistake, again, once you go through the tutorial, you will be asked to pick a starting city, and you really have to be careful about which city you pick, because once you sign up, you receive around 4,500 UPX as starting balance. However, that's likely not enough to actually buy a property depending on where you are. For me, within Brooklyn, it's literally impossible to find a property for that amount of UPX, which means while I'm already in the game, I still have to use daily login rewards to accumulate more UPX to eventually be able to buy something. Luckily enough, while I screwed up, I also did the homework so you don't make the same mistake, because there's a website called upx.world, I'm going to share it with you guys, where you can go and you can then go to data tools and their big data properties, and you can simply set a filter for property status unlocked and only FSA. Now FSA stands for Fair Start Act, and it means that properties labeled with FSA can only be bought by characters or players that have less than 100,000 UPX in net worth. So it should ensure that wealthy or rich players don't buy up everything, but that there are still some properties available for starters and smaller players as well. And with that in place, you can press the search button and the website will now look for properties that are not owned yet but already unlocked and are basically protected by the FSA Act or Fair Start Act. And as we can see when we scroll down, you'll already notice that most of the properties at the time of recording this video appear to be within Fresno. So while I picked Brooklyn as my starting city, which currently has one address listed here, which we're gonna get to in a second as well, there are a lot more within Fresno, which means if you pick Fresno as your starting city, chances are much higher that you'll actually able to find properties early in the game while you still have a lower balance. And I get that you might still be wondering, why do I need properties and so on? We'll get to that in a second as well. I just wanted to show you the best way to pick your starting city. So in other words, before picking the starting city for your block explorer, so your in-game character, make sure to visit upx.world, follow the steps that I just showed you to figure out what's currently the city with the most FSA protected, low price available properties, so you have an easier time getting started. And the beauty about this website is that we can just copy the addresses here. So I can, for example, copy this address here for Brooklyn, since I'm in Brooklyn, go to Upland, press the search icon and enter the address here to then zoom in on that address to actually see if the property is still there and available. And if I zoom out a little bit, well, we can see there are a bunch of FSA properties, but based on the color, so that they are light blue, they are already all owned. So while the upx.world website tells me that this property is actually available, well, that's simply not the case anymore, because as we can see on this street and here, there is no gray property. And we can also confirm that when I click on those FSA properties, you can see owner Homik, and if we go to the next one, we can see owner, I don't know, LCT REV and so on, which means even if I wanted to, I simply cannot buy the property because they are not available. So what you would be looking for is something that I personally haven't seen yet, and that would be basically a gray tile, which means it's an unminted property, so you would become its first owner. Or if your block explorer is close to the property, then it would be light green and would indicate that you can buy that property. That's why, again, it's important to A, check the upx.world website to see which city has the most unminted properties before you pick your starting city, and then B, take some time to look around. Since I mentioned the proximity of the block explorer, this brings me to another point. I'm going to push the icon in the bottom left corner to go to my block explorer, and you can see this line that follows it, so the trail of its movements, and I can pretty much only look or interact or properly interact with properties that are on this line or close to that line or close to my block explorer. So if I would want to buy a property that's available, my block explorer would need to be somewhere in the area. Now, while your block explorer randomly moves around, you can also purposefully send him somewhere. For that, you would have to click on a property where you want to go, and then in the pop-up you will see the send button. However, and that's a catch that I learned the hard way, which is why I don't have even my starting balance left right now, the fee that you see in the top left, so here 15 UPX, is what's called a visitor's fee. So if I send my block explorer here, I actually will be charged those 15 UPX just for going there. On top of that, talking about the send feature, if I press it, you can see that I currently have 11 cents left. So it's possible that you use up your cents and you won't be able to travel manually anymore until they recharged, or until you go or come close to send icons on the map. So technically, if you run out of cents, you could basically just either wait for your block explorer to get close enough to a send icon. You can see I'm still too far away. Or you could select the property close to the send icon, send yourself there, again suffer paying the visitor's fee, and then click on the send icons, and you will get at least 1 cent refunded, which basically is plus minus zero since you just spent one to get there, up to the highest I so far got were 3 cents that one envelope or paper plane or paper airplane actually restored for me. However, again, considering that you spent UPX for traveling, it's not the smartest thing to do. So now that we've covered the basic, it actually brings us to how to best proceed. First of all, as mentioned multiple times, but I cannot emphasize it often enough, make sure that you pick the right starting city, which at the time of recording this video, in my opinion, would be Fresno. Second of all, if you can find properties that you can buy, then go ahead and buy one already, because the property will earn you interest. Another important aspect that I haven't mentioned so far is your status within Upland, because when you sign up, you're only a visitor in quotes, which means until you have a total net worth of 10,000 UPX, so your balance plus the worth of your properties, you are not able to use all the features. So for example, while you're just a visitor and not yet an Uplander, you could, for example, also not buy properties that are for sale by other users. If you try to do that, you will be told that the marketplace is only available for Uplanders. In other words, your first goal and primary goal is to reach a total net worth or balance of 10,000 UPX, which you can do in multiple ways. Method number one, as mentioned, is make sure to pick the right city, get a property, have that property earn you interest, and eventually you'll reach the 10,000 UPX to become an Uplander. One other aspect here, until you become an Uplander, as mentioned, you're a visitor, which means you have a 7-day visa and you will need to manually renew that visa. You will be asked to do that whenever you log in, but you can also just go to your profile, and on the profile you see my visa expires in 6 days, 22 hours, 5 minutes, and I can just press the renew your visa button and it will reset again to another 7 days. If you are, however, unlucky or like me made the mistake of picking the wrong city, so you cannot afford a property, well then you'll have to go with method number 2. And method number 2 is simply log in once per day to receive your daily login rewards. Unfortunately, it's something I cannot show you in the video because I already collected them today, but I took a screenshot earlier, so I'm gonna put that up right now here. And as you can see, you can earn a couple hundred of UPX per week simply for logging in once per day. Keep doing that until your balance becomes big enough to buy a property or until you cross the 10,000 UPX line to become an Uplander. And that would basically be the second way, although obviously buying a property has other perks as well, because you can start collecting visitor fees, which means, for example, you can go to the official Upland Discord and ask people that have a lot of UPX to visit your property to help you build up your funds. Buying your first property also brings another benefit with it, because you can start completing so-called collection. A collection would be something like buy your first property, own 3 properties in Brooklyn, and similar things. And having collections increases the amount of interest properties gain for you, which means it helps you with your earnings. But as mentioned, if you screwed up like I did, well then simply log in once per day, collect your daily login rewards, and then take it from there once you cross the 10,000 UPX threshold, or once you have enough funds to actually buy a property and you're lucky enough to find one that's not owned already. There's another feature within Upland that you might be tempted to try because the tutorial will promote it to you, and that is something called a treasure hunt. If we go back to Upland, we can find it, or I can find it if I go to the menu at the bottom and there go to treasures. And you can see that I have the ability to spawn 1 treasure for free per day. That treasure technically gives between 120 and 3,400 UPX reward. I've personally collected 4 of those treasures so far, and I only received 120 to 170 UPX reward. You might now think that's a great idea to speed up the process, but it actually is not. First of all, you can only spawn this treasure for free once per day. After that, every time you want to spawn it, you have to pay 50 UPX. And again, most of the time you only receive 120 UPX reward, which means you'll spend 5 minutes of your time trying to find a treasure for 70 UPX increase in your balance, or at least that's theoretical, because as I mentioned earlier, if you want to move around, you'll have to pay visitor fees on other properties, making the treasure hunt for new users actually a losing proposition, because you will lose more than the 70 UPX in your visitor fees to locate the treasure. Still, how do treasure hunts work? Just for the fun of it, I'm actually going to activate the treasure here. I'm not going to find it, but just to show you how it works. So I would say spawn the treasure. You can see that's how much I could earn, but again, highly unlikely to receive a high amount. I'm going to say spawn for free, close this, and I'm going to go to my block explorer. Now here at my block explorer, for every property that's close to me, I can click on it, and I will see, when I press the treasure icon, an arrow that points towards where the treasure is. Now a blue arrow and that slow animation indicates that the treasure is in this direction, but quite far away. So what I would have to do now is close this, zoom out, and then basically go in the direction the arrow indicated, and actually quite far, although the treasure will be within the city district you are in, so within Brooklyn. Then zoom in here, and then for example pick a property here and send myself to this property to then check how the arrow changed. Does it still point in the same direction? Does it now point in the other direction? Eventually the arrow will start to turn red and pulse faster, which indicates that you're very close. However, it will still take you at least, let's say best case, 3 cents to get to the final spot of the treasure to actually locate it, which means you will pay at least 60 UPS in visitor fees. But since visitor fees go as high as 100 per visit, if I remember it right, it's actually a losing proposition. That's why I personally started with 4,500 UPX after signing up. And although I collected 4 treasures simply by traveling around a bit and hunting the treasures, I actually still have 405 UPX less than when I signed up a couple of days ago, and that despite my daily login rewards, because it simply took me some time to actually figure out that I pay visitor fees when I visit locations. That's pretty much how Upland works. Now the big question is it worth your time? Personally, I would not spend money on buying UPX because it's a fixed value cryptocurrency that you cannot exchange, trade, or do anything with. It's just an in-game currency. However, if we combine or look at other projects that we talked in the past in videos on this channel, like Pi Network, High Dollars, and so on, all projects where basically you log in once per day and you push a button once per day, well, Upland falls in the same category. Simply sign up. Again, you can use the link in the description or the first pinned comment down below, and then once per day log in to grow your balance, and every time you have a couple of thousand, just spend 5 minutes to find a property. Grow your properties. Look into collections that you could potentially complete to increase your earnings, and eventually, maybe in a month, maybe in half a year, maybe in a year, maybe even in 2 years, start selling your properties against real cash that you can get paid via PayPal to your PayPal account, which means you'll actually get money for the effort put in. Personally, I think if you're in that kind of game, you might also just spend some time and enjoy the game itself. For me, myself, I will just claim the daily rewards, try to buy properties, wait for my interest to accumulate more money to buy more properties, focus on completing collections, and I probably don't plan to sell any properties for a couple months or maybe a couple years, because I'm sure there will be a couple of hardcore players that eventually will be willing to pay decent dollar amounts for those properties given time. In other words, I can't tell you exactly how profitable Upland will be for you. It's possible that you spend 5 minutes per day for the next 2 years and then in the end make $5 in payout or potentially even zero. But I personally believe that if you're already using other apps like Pi Network, High Dollars, and so on, where you have to perform a small, short daily task, you might as well add Upland to the list and simply confirm your attendance in quotes, like it would be called in TimeStope, once per day to get your login bonus. And then again, whenever possible, buy more properties to increase your interest, to increase your overall earnings. The last thing I want to mention in this video is that there's obviously way more Upland has to offer. You could check out the roadmap and then dive into other features that the platform has to offer once you reach the Uplander status or even higher, Steady. However, for me personally, it's all about how can we get the biggest payout with the least investment of money or time. So that's why I personally, as mentioned, don't recommend that you buy UPX unless you really enjoy the game and want to dive into it, but simply get the free coins that you can, buy some properties, and if Upland stays as popular as it is right now and keeps growing, well, eventually you will be able to sell that property for real US dollars, so for actual money in your account. And as always, if you have any question whatsoever, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, or even better, use the link in the pinned comment or description down below to jump on our Discord server, where you'll also find an Upland Discord channel where you can discuss Upland with me and the community there. Thanks for watching. See you in one of my other videos. Till then, bye bye.